9 people on this meeting. You can all unmute your microphones and ask me questions on the fly. I will ask you questions on the fly because, like I said, it's not a one-way thing, it's a two-way thing. So I will be asking questions over here because we are all going to work on this together in this journey. So now, before I speak about each problem, what's more important is you have to also, as a petroleum engineer, do a good reservoir study and actually ask yourself, can that reservoir actually produce? Is it worth investing all these new things? So as in potential, as in how much barrels per day it can do. Is it high? Is it less? So with these factors, you can now have a framework. Okay, this was my problem. What, why, where, and this is how I fix it. This same methodology now is going to be applied. Now that you got a hang of it, now we're going to do the same methodology with each type of problem. So that's why I said it's a discussion, not a lecture. So you can all unmute as I'm saying it this for the fourth time. Low reservoir pressure. Now question to, let me pick someone here. Uh, Mahesh Reddy Namburi. So, how do you define a brownfield? How do you define a depleted reservoir? If you can unmute yourself. If Maheshwari can't speak, then anyone else can also take that question. I mean, it's straightforward. Okay, so I'll just take this one myself. Low reservoir pressure, obviously, we're talking about the production profile has now fallen at a, it is, as the name suggests, low production. So low production, low reservoir pressure can be as because the production profile is right now at the plateau or maybe at the declining level, like this, as you can see in the image to the right. So if it's at a decline or if it's at a plateau, that's bad news because you need to do something about it. If you don't do something about it, you're going to lose barrels, and the sooner you do it, the better it is. And how do you confirm that this is the problem in the first place? Uh, like I said, you do a periodic separator test, well test to confirm this. This is actually a very good example on the, just look at the first column to the left side. So before production, pressure was good where the well was. After 10 years, production has depleted, pressure has depleted. And after 40 years, it has even depleted even further. So the blue region is basically means depletion. So that has spread even further after 40 years. So what are the consequences of this? Okay, this is the problem. This is how we confirm it. What's the consequence? Well, you're going to get less production. You're going to make less money. You might get more water because as you're producing oil, as you're depleting reservoir, the oil water contact is also shifting up. So you're going to get that. And one more problem is with that is also that as you're producing your reservoir, the pressure is falling. If it falls below bubble point, you're all aware of bubble point, right? If no, I can explain it.
If anyone is not aware of bubble point, please raise your hand because it is very important in terms of reservoir engineering.
Yeah, I'll just assume that people know it. Basically, bubble point basically means the reservoir pressure was above the bubble point, meaning there's a phase envelope that you may remember if you look at reservoir engineering, Ahmed Tariq. So if you produce the more you produce, the more reservoir pressure is going to drop. If it drops below that phase envelope, which is also called bubble point, gas that was earlier dissolved in oil, now it doesn't stay dissolved in oil. Now it starts coming out of the oil. Now, if gas is also coming out, then that is also a problem because your well was meant to produce oil, not gas. So your whole separator capacity now will be filled with gas. So now you have no option but to flare it. So a lot of new problems are approaching because of this simple concept. Then, of course, there is also one of the ways, one of the gases also apart from methane is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, if it becomes, if it's dissolved form, okay, that's one way, that's okay, we can deal with it. But if you're producing below bubble point, carbon dioxide will be liberated, and carbon dioxide, as you know, is acidic, so it's gonna raise some metallurgy corrosion concerns. Um, So now that you know, okay, what is the problem, now that you confirmed it, now that you know the consequence of that problem, now comes the last segment, how to fix it. So how do you fix it? Question to, I mean, who's responsive over here? Wahid seems responsive. So Wahid, unfortunately, I'll have to drag you in this. How do we fix it? How
Sir,
do we increase the reservoir pressure?
sir, water injection.
Yes, that is very good, Wahid. In the simple sense that if your reservoir pressure is reducing, so you need to increase reservoir pressure. So you need to do something called pressure maintenance, which is, there are two ways to do that: either do a water flooding or do a gas flooding, depending on reservoirs. So try to think of it like this: you have a tire which is filled with gas. You puncture that tire by putting your knife. So that is the analogy, is the well. The well has been drilled and perforated, and once you remove the knife, the gas is gonna come out of the tire, right? The car is gonna, the level of car is gonna drop down. And on the other hand, Wahid is on the other side of the tire, and he has inserted a gas tube. And also, on one hand, your gas is coming out from that knife cut. On the other hand, Wahid is pumping gas. So the same thing is happening. Pressure is being balanced. Yeah, it has reduced from here, but it has been increased from here. So that is a great strategy that was done way back in 1950s or 70s. Uh, and that's when we realized, okay, let's do a secondary oil recovery, which is, as Wahid said, just pump water. There are many advantages of water apart from pressure maintenance. It also pushes the oil. And now, unfortunately, the second advantage also has some limitations. You do a water flooding, and then you realize after that that even after water flooding, people have noticed that there is decline in pressure, a decline in production. That is happening because there is some oil still being bypassed. So that's when you do tertiary recovery, where you basically, what do we do in tertiary recovery, Wahid?
Sir, artificial lift.
Yeah, does anyone else would like to take that? Guys, I mean, I see lots of people here. I see maybe 10 people. So anyone can unmute apart from Wahid. It's simple to unmute yourself. You can just click on this button that I'm showing right now. So,
Yeah.
yes,
I
sir.
think I think
Yeah.
it will be the enhanced oil recovery where we'll inject some chemicals, phosphorus, or it may be thermal flooding. Might be that.
Exactly. Exactly, man. I mean, what's your name?
My name is Shubhrojit.
You're from Lords?
No, no, I'm from Kolkata, India.
Okay, I mean, the Lords College you're studying in?
Okay, okay, College Presidency University.
Acha, okay. Great. Great. Yes. So enhanced oil recovery is one of the ways, as you just said, because like I said, some of the oil was being bypassed, and that was being bypassed because your water liquid properties was different than oil, the viscosity and density, and that's why fingering or bypassing happens. So you need to now tailor your chemical in such a way that it is able to not finger but push like a piston to the oil. So one of the ways is chemical. You put in your water, you put polymer. In your water, you put surfactants. In your water, depending on different reservoir characteristics, you put different types of chemicals to recover this. So now, obviously, these are the things that have been done. Wait, hold on. So Wahid was saying artificial lift. Why the artificial lift comes under primary recovery? Artificial lift is being produced. I mean, you're just assisting the oil to be produced by itself, natural flow. So just to correct you. Hope that is addressing your question. Now that I have explained what has been done in the past, now you have to also think about what are the limitations of the things that have been used in the past. For example, enhanced oil recovery or secondary oil recovery requires so much of chemicals, so much of because your reservoir is also so big. We are talking about acres, so you're gonna require lots of chemicals. So what do we do about it? Those are the limitations, and of course, the time takes to actually know that your EOR is successful also takes a lot of time. It takes 1 year also for the the chemical to from injector to producer to reaching it. It may even take 1 year depending on the distance. So what are the new technologies out there? And of course, one of the limitations of the EOR is also that, this was, someone raised this earlier as well. If it's a tight reservoir, how do you what EOR would you do in a tight reservoir? So, for example, if I have a tight reservoir, I can't just put water in it. I mean, water requires some amount of good permeability for it to even enter the reservoir in the first place, right? So one of the ways to brainstorm over this is make your surfactant also smaller. As in, you use, if you're doing EOR in tight rocks, just go with nano surfactants. Nano surfactants that can go even smallest of the smallest pore throat it can enter. And not only that, it can change your reservoir interfacial tension and wettability to improve your recovery. So that is done in tight rocks. And then there are, so like I said, the other limitation of the EOR techniques where they require lots of capital expenditure, lots of chemicals. So one more way is to, if depending on reservoir conditions, the characteristics, the structural depth, these things also matter. And then if they are suitable, you can also do mobile immiscible gas injection, which are basically these, you have this Wrigley's tool that comes in, it's called membrane nitrogen. It takes the nitrogen from these air, because air contains 80% nitrogen, 20% oxygen. It takes it and pumps it down the reservoir to create a gas cap. And obviously this requires, it can be done on a single well to well basis, or it can be done on a one well to other well as well. So that is one of the ways yes, someone had a question. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, so there's someone, someone's window is also, there's a guy shouting, but as I've said, now that you know that what are the things that have been used in the past, now that you know the limitations of the things that have been used in the past, now you also then to address those limitations, you also have new technologies. So now that you have all this understanding, how do you then make a decision? Sorry, this is just an example of the nano surfactant that I told you about. It carries a surfactant as well as solvent, which is being provided by us SK Oilfield. So economics, like I said, ultimately capital expenditure, how much is the overall cost, and then how much is the operational expenditure cost, risk assessment. If anyone is, we can't, I mean, risk assessment in the sense you can't inject at a pressure that is higher than fracture pressure of the rock, because if you do that, you're creating fractures, and if you do create fractures, your EOR is useless now, because all that fluid will now go through that highway and not through the matrix. And if you take the highway, you can't push the oil, which is the first reason why we installed all these things in the first place. And then ultimately break even time, and does the reservoir have that potential? These are the same questions that I raised earlier as well. So with that said, does anyone have any questions so far? You need to have questions because, like I said, it's a discussion, it's not a lecture. So I'll just give you 5 seconds and then I'll go on to the next topic.
So if you have any questions, you can ask to Basharat sir, and if you hesitate to ask in the group, you can just leave your question in the chat box.
Yeah, that's actually good advice. Okay, so Nawaz sir, am I going too fast, or am I in the optimum speed, or is it understandable?
sir, it's very understandable. You can go as you're going right now.
Right, right. Great, great. Thanks. I was just concerned maybe I'm speaking very hi-fi or anyway, which is good. So now we come to the next problem, formation damage. So Wahid, I'm going to trouble you as well, since since I want to torture you. Now go on and tell me what is formation damage. Uh, or the guy from Presidency University, if he can help us on this matter.
So, formation damage refers to certain factors which causes the problems. I mean, the permeability of the reservoir will be damaged, maybe due to a bad scale, bad perforation, or maybe due to sand cells getting deposited. It can be
Correct.
anything. So, when the formation permeability is impaired, that is formation damage.
Exactly. Exactly, as he said. But you know, you have to also. What's your name?
Shubhrojit Mukherjee, sir.
Yeah, Shubhrajit. One more thing you also have to keep in mind whenever you're even explaining something, you have to look at what's your overall objective. Okay, this is happening, but what is the consequence of this? You are concerned. You're a petroleum engineer, so you're concerned with petroleum. So my oil production is being reduced because of some X factor, as you said, and that X factor can be happening near wellbore or the formation. So then question is, what is that X? As you said, plugins. So if I'll just explain this. Plugins, like, you know, during drilling, you've used low circulation materials. You've perforated that at the completion stage. Now that is going to stick to your sand face, and you need to do something about it because you won't get any production. So you do something. I'll tell you what the solution should be. There's also particle plugging. Particle plugging means the first point was uh, the first point was regards to the minute you drill the well and you've completed the well. The second bullet point refers to particle plugging, which happens after the well has been drilled, after the well has been producing after for so many after X or 5 to 10 years after later that. And what happens if you start to if I sent Subhajit on a field, and if you can just mute yourself, whoever's mic is that. So as I said, if I've sent Subhajit on a field and Subhajit just decided, Arey yaar, I'm producing this field on 50 barrels per day, but let me just produce it on 100 barrels per day. Let's see what happens. So what happens after that, Subhajit, is basically that for that 50 barrels per day, your seniors have kept it for a reason. If you produce it even further than that, then the oil that is being produced, it also takes the sand grains along with it. Um, it would take that along with it, and as the sand is being dragged with this oil, you've just created a sanding problem. And one more way is to also have this plugins in associated with fluid filtrate, meaning you have a workover operation. So after 10 years, let's say your tubing was your tubing has some corrosion problem, and you deploy a workover rig. The workover rig sets and then it pulls out the tubing. And while that whole process is happening, you have to make sure that the well is not going to produce by itself, right? Because you're now fixing the well. You don't want the well to be produced. So you put a workover fluid, and then workover fluid, if it's not good, then that fluid will actually it won't even the solids may deposit to the sand face, but because there's a hydrostatic column, there's a hydraulic press now, and because this is a permeable formation, it acts like a filter, and as the hydraulic pressure is being applied, this filtrate may pass through that permeable formation and it goes into the rock. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's just that you have to be careful of what the rock is, because you see on the right, there's an image before damage, oil was being produced, it was good. But after damage, there's a filtrate that I told you. That filtrate which passed through that permeable formation, it may interact with your formation which has clays. Clays as in smectite, ilmenite. those clays, if they interact with the water, they may get swollen. So what's the consequence of all this? Okay, this chemistry is happening, but what's happening? So if it becomes swollen, the permeability is being reduced. And as permeability is being reduced, tell me, Shubhajit, what happens if permeability is reduced?
So the productivity index will go down, so flow rate will be reduced. Ultimate recovery will be hampered.
Exactly. So, like I said, formation damage may happen anywhere. It may happen near your wellbore. It may happen beyond your wellbore. It may go throughout your whole reservoir. Also, may get formation damage. So, one of the things to always know is your sand clean or is your sand dirty? So, question to anyone apart from Wahed and Shubhajit. What's the difference between clean and dirty sand? That person from which one is it? Andhra University, the colleague of Syed Nawaz sir, his name is I forgot, but can he help us on this? If you can unmute yourself. Or can anyone help me? What's the difference between clean and dirty sand?
So clean sand will be when only there is sandstone, but dirty sand means there is a shale as well as sandstone.
Okay, would anyone else would like to give a try? Okay, so that's a good attempt, Shubhajit, but what's happening here is it's not just shales, but so shales is one of the things, yes, but dirty sand, the definition is, it has clay in it. So if it's more than 5% clay, it's dirty sand. If it's less than 5% clay, it's clean sand. So whatever workover fluid chemistry that you're designing, KCl or whatever fluid it is, make sure that you know, is your sand dirty or clean? And my apologies, I didn't know the other guy was from mechanical. So now ultimately, how do you confirm and quantify formation damage? Okay, my formation damage is maybe happening. So, but this is happening downhole. You're at the surface. So how do you know that there's formation damage happening? Before that, let me just tell you what are the consequences of formation damage. Formation damage, as you know, as Shubhajit just said, it reduces permeability, and if there's any question anyone would like to ask, as they unmuted themselves, they can just ask me. So as I said, consequence of all this is basically it prevents effective depletion. So basically, permeability is reduced. So whatever oil that was there that was supposed to come, it's now trapped. It's like this image over here on the top right. Like this image that I show you below that image. So you see before damage, the production profile is shown below that image, and after damage, the production profile is shown after that. So it's not production profile actually, it's pressure profile. So you can see as the damage is happening, this is just assuming that the damage was happening near wellbore. As the damage happened near wellbore, you can see the depletion, it happened only till here, but you can see if had it been undamaged, the depletion would have been very good. So more the depletion, more the production. So over here, depletion didn't happen very well. And then there's this pressure drop. And now in order to suck any fluid, you need to overcome this pressure drop, which is very high. So that's the whole problem of this formation damage. Now, ultimately, how do you confirm this? As I've said, because you're at the surface, right? The petroleum engineer is at the surface. How does he confirm that this is happening in the first place? So you do PLT.
Well testing.
Yeah, well testing is one of the ways because drawdown test, build-up test, as I've explained in the beginning of the slides, the graph that you put from a drawdown test, you take a slope of that, and you basically get a lot of data from that, and then you substitute that in an equation, you get skin, and then from that you can also find out, okay, what is the extent of the skin. So again, this is very empirical. There are new technologies as well to find this out. Of course, you can also take that core and then you can also subject the same condition that you subjected to a well to that core, and you can then also replicate. You can simulate that entire environment to confirm things. And once you know the cause of the formation damage, like because there are many factors that contribute formation damage, right? So you need to solve it, and in order to solve it, you need to know the cause of it, root cause. So now that we discussed what is this formation damage and how is it happening and why is it happening, now how do we fix it? So Shubhajit, can you help us?
So wellbore stimulation like hydraulic fracturing, all of these methods, or acidizing.
Right. Yes, the second part was right because hydraulic fracturing, that's meant to solve another problem that I've discussed in the first slide, right? Low reservoir permeability or tight reservoirs. Doing hydraulic fracturing in a formation damage well is actually, there are you should look at other ways as well. So as you said, matrix acidization is one of the ways to, because you have before even suggesting that, you have to know the damage cause of the damage first. So if it is plugging, then you do matrix acidization. If it is just the sand grains have just come out from the formation, then you just reperforate. As you said, hydraulic fracturing, but you do that looking at the candidates, because generally plugging and reperforation only is enough to solve this. But if it's a very deep damage, the whole formation itself is gone, then while refracturing, put a good fluid to reverse that damage. Yes, the damage can be reversed as well. You just have to use the right consultant for that, and VSK also provide that. And one more way to prevent this is also do a proper design before the damage even happens. Prevent this from happening in the first place. So that can be also done. And I've also kept an appendix in these slides that basically talks of, if the cause is this, how do we confirm it? And if you've confirmed it, how do you fix it? So we can even go through that later on. So as I've said, matrix acidization is one of the very known very popular ways to solve formation damage. You just pump acid through those perforations, and we expect things to fix based on core data. There's a skin formula as well, which is very important, has been asked many times in GATE as well. So now that you know, but you have to know for before we even, so these are the things that has been done. And now Shubhajit has been given a new well. He has to first look at how has this problem been solved before, and he has to also know what are the limitations of that. Has there been any side effect of doing this? So then after proper study, he also has to know these limitations, and then he has to has technologies that address this limitation and perform better than the old technology. And so there are ways like the same that I told you earlier as well. There is lateral jetting, because it can bypass. Because like I said, if you are doing hydraulic fracturing, you have to know for sure where is the oil water contact. We don't want to do hydraulic fracturing because the fracture is very uncontrolled. So it can go straight, it can then go down as well, it can go up as well. There are there are compressive stresses as well, horizontal stress, minimum horizontal stress. But still, we don't want to take that uncertainty. So, and you have to know ultimately that fluid will go wherever there's least resistance. So what if there was a VUG, a very high vertical permeability channel? So that's it. You just give your hydraulic frac a way to say hello to your water bearing formation. So one of the ways is that do lateral jetting, because this is focused, this is accurate. One more way is having these needles. And the third way is also, like I said, preventing this from happening in the first place. So we can use like in an example of workover application, where you're deploying workover rig to pull the tubing, and while this you put a chemical to make sure that the well doesn't produce by itself. while doing this, make sure you're using LCM in that treatment, because that LCM will stay in the formation. It won't allow fluid to go inside the formation. Your formation is safe, your well is good. So that is one of the ways you can think about it. Then ultimately, now that you know, okay, what are the old technologies, what are the limitations of that, how do we fix it, what are the economics?
So what is LCM treatment, sir?
Yes, thanks for that. It's just lost circulation material. Now, you may be thinking, okay, how come lost circulation material is in this formation damage? Well, in a workover, this happened a lot in the northeast of India, that we've seen that during a workover process, they put a workover fluid, and because there was a hydrostatic pressure of that workover fluid, it was going inside the formation. As simple as that. And the formation also had high permeability. So it was like allowing, it was inviting the workover fluid, please come to me. So then we realized we need to use LCM, which is basically loss circulation method treatment, which basically means mica. No, I'm not talking about the conventional LCMs, which is mica plugs and those things. I'm talking about special chemicals that go inside the formation and then plug it, and then don't allow workover fluid to go inside the formation. Now you may be asking, okay, you are also doing a formation damage in a way, because now your LCM is now into the formation. Now how do we, and it has also become a plug. So then the speciality of that LCM treatment is it is acid soluble. So once your workover process is done, you remove all your workover fluid from baler and you just pump acid. That whole plug will be dissolved by itself. It's a chemistry solution. It is having it's a chemistry problem. It has a chemistry solution. So that is one of the ways to fix it. Like I said, there are multiple ways to look at to solve a particular problem once you know the problem of the cause of the problem itself. Does that answer your question? Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, okay. So yeah, like I said, these acid soluble LCM, you just pump it, you allow it to soak for 5 to 6 hours. That chemical will set, and that's it. And after your workover, you just pump acid to unset it. So hope that addresses your query. Ultimately, then now that you know, okay, what has been used in the past, what are the limitations of this, and what are the new things that address this limitation and perform better than the old, then you look at economics. How much is it actually costing?
So that's an end for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like so, then hit like, share, comment and subscribe to my YouTube channel Petroleum Universe. Press the bell icon for the latest notification. Have a nice day.